Activate.
All right, everybody. Hey, I am DJ Kelly Reverb.
Fam.
You got it hooked up today. Welcome to This Pink Cloud. We are a show that is about multiple pathways to recovery, all that good stuff, mental health as well. Speaking of mental health, we had a mental health challenge today, but everybody give it up for my good friend, Chad LeMans.
I go by it says Chade.
Chade?
Chade. CHAEDE.
I thought
LeMans.
I thought we were going to go
DJ,
with
producer, and hell yeah advocate.
I thought we were going to go
title.
I thought we were going to go with Chade.
That is kind of Chade. It just depends on what country you're in. If you were in France, it would be pronounced
All right.
Chade.
Ah.
If you're in
okay.
America, it's just pronounced Chade. But if you were Sade, you would pronounce it Chade.
There we go. All right.
Not that she's a country, but
Yeah. Anyway, I'll edit all that out. That's okay. But so be sure to like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. I am excited to have this guy in. I actually met him through a guest that we had on the show. Shout out Clark Ford. Yeah. And this guy's name is Hadley Baker, and he has a book called No Longer a Slave. Is that in frame there?
that
Chad?
is in frame.
Nice.
You're doing pretty good.
You want me
Covered
to
up your
just
face.
leave
So,
it
yeah,
there?
just leave it there.
Just
the whole
leave
time.
it there the whole show. But I'm excited to have him on all the way from Rowlett, Texas. Everybody give it up for Hadley Baker.
Great to be here, man.
How are you, dude?
Doing great, man. Thank y'all for having me, man.
And the hallelujah music.
Awesome.
There you go.
I feel so important right now.
Well, no, I'm excited to talk about this because, normally when people think about addiction,
Right.
and our show is primarily based on substance abuse,
Right.
Or substance use disorder, whatever you want to call it. But you're one of those different addictions,
Yeah.
I would say. But then you're also a pastor
Right.
at a church.
Yeah.
So, you've got a fascinating story, and I can't wait to hear it. So,
Yeah, it's interesting, man, because as I was sharing with you guys earlier, when I talk to people about addiction and recovery, a lot of them immediately have mental imagery of alcohol,
Oh, yeah.
drugs, things like that.
Mhm.
And the great irony is, like, I've never been drunk
Mhm.
day in my life.
Right.
I've never done any drugs, never smoked pot, anything. So people hear that and they're like, "Oh, what a good guy, what a
Right.
squeaky clean little church boy."
Well, see, but us,
Yeah.
Chad and I go, what's wrong with that?
Right, exactly. What happened to that guy?
Right.
But for me, the addiction route took a different form.
Okay.
Via pornography and sexual addiction, and so it man, if you do like a side by side as far as the symptoms and the behaviors and the manifestations, I mean, virtually synonymous with substance, or alcohol addiction. I mean, addiction at the end of the day is something that controls your life, and you can no longer manage it. I mean, and
Sure.
that's definitely where I was.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, so, I mean, I guess how long ago did you write the book?
So the book came out, technically I did the release in March of 2024 this year.
Okay.
And then I did, that was with my launch team.
Uh-huh.
And then I did the public release in April. And so, not even a year yet, man. About 6-7 months ago it came out. And so it's been cool to see the way God is opening doors for the book. I got an email the other day from a man in Michigan who came across the book, and he heard me on a radio broadcast. And it's been cool, man, to have these types of conversations.
Sure.
With people that can relate to my journey and have
Right.
their own unique experiences.
Well, one of the things, I mean, because it was Clark that quoted your book.
Yeah.
What was the quote?
One of the things I say that I think particularly resonated with him, and it was actually a clip I posted on my Instagram, but
Sure.
I said, you will never fight for your freedom if you don't think you're worthy of it.
Yeah.
And as you guys know, there's so much shame that comes with addiction that,
Sure.
that rather than your addiction being something that you struggle with, it becomes your very identity.
Right.
And you internalize that shame. And at some point, it's like your mind crosses over to this belief that says, you know what, I'm not even worthy of freedom. Look at how badly I've screwed up. Look at all the people I've hurt. Look at look at the mess I've made. Like, I'm not even worthy of this. And so you don't even fight for it because you don't think you're deserving.
Right.
And for whatever reason, man, that clip just spoke to him. And that's kind of the
it's a good one. I'm not going to lie. It's a good one. Yeah.
It's and that's my story is for so long I felt so unworthy of freedom. I felt so much shame, particularly, growing up in a religious upbringing, and knowing better from day one.
Sure.
And I think that coupled with just the deviant nature of like pornography use and sexual
well
abuse.
And like let's get into it. Because we all, at least probably you and I, we're probably about the age where it was like your dad's stash of magazines or whatever, but like paint us a picture of how it goes.
For sure, man. Well, so I tell people I think my addiction pathway began even before I was born. And what I mean by that is I was an unplanned pregnancy. My mom had me at the age of 17. And the first doctor she actually went to encouraged her to abort me. And I joke in the book that, she showed that doctor her tall finger and she left and went and got a second opinion. And so I was born in February of 78. But never knew my biological father.
Okay.
And, that's a common tale. And I think because it's so common and so pervasive in our society, it's even championed now when you see a lot of the, the women that have children, and
single moms.
I don't need a man. I don't, and they realize, or they don't realize that, hey, you may not need a man, but your child does. Your child,
sure.
And all the science and all the data, social data proves that. Like children that grow up without a father are exponentially more at risk for all kinds of, behaviors and legal issues and educational problems. It just runs the whole gamut.
Right.
And so I can just tell you at a very early age, I remember, I knew my dad wasn't there. And particularly in settings when I would see my friends and all their dads were around, like T-ball practice, right?
Or Indian guides or something like that. Like,
right?
Yeah.
You would have, even at church events and I'm like, where's my dad?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think happens to a lot of people in that situation is when you have gaps in your mind, and that you don't know what happened, there's mystery, or there's some level of just, man, I can't discern what's real and what's not. You fill in those gaps with beliefs. And I think more often than not, those beliefs are not good ones. And, I just reasoned for me that, the problem wasn't with my dad. Something was wrong with me, that my dad would leave. Yeah. And so from my earliest memories, I just remember feeling horrifically insecure, feeling just like something's wrong with me, and just that deep sense of shame, like I'm not enough, I'll never be enough. And then I get a little bit older, and my mom marries a man, and he's my stepdad. And by this time, I've got 2 younger brothers, and we all have different dads. And he became kind of a surrogate father figure for me. And I latched onto him and even took his last name.
And how old was this?
Man, I was about 4 years old when they got married.
Right.
And so it was...
So he had a chance to really be your father figure.
Yeah. He had a chance.
Yeah.
He had a chance.
There we go.
But he himself, and I can honestly, even all these years now, not to excuse his actions or his inactions, but I can look back now and see him through a lens of compassion. But he battled his own addictions, particularly with alcohol and substance, and so when he was there, he was awesome. But man, it was a Jekyll and Hyde situation, man. When he was in his addiction, he was never physically abusive to my brothers or me. Yeah. But the way he would treat my mom and just the things I witnessed, it was incredibly dysfunctional. Yeah. And there was a very and I would call it a climactic moment. Where my mom and my brothers and I had gone away. This was Labor Day weekend, 1988. And I realize for some of your listeners, they're like, bro, you're old as crap. Right? And to some of them, you know what? Hey, if the shoe fits, I'll wear it. Right. But, we had gone away to the lake with one of my mom's friends. And rather than coming back on actual Labor Day, we came back on that Sunday. And my stepdad was not expecting us back. He had not gone. Right. The short version of a long story is when we came back, he had his side chick there with him at the house. And there's a confrontation ensues between my mom, the side chick, and my stepdad. And basically, my mom gives him an ultimatum. Right. Hey, you're going to have to choose between me and these kids, or is it going to be her?
Right.
And of course, there's a lot of emotion. It's a very volatile situation. And man, I'll never forget this, bro. As long as I live, I'll never forget this. She gives him this ultimatum. We're standing outside in the front yard of this house, and he just turns, and it was almost like slow motion. Like he turns and walks in the house, and it was like, and not saying anything, he said everything.
Yeah.
Like, not you, and not those kids.
Right.
And dude, I remember it was like someone just stabbed me in the chest.
Right.
I'm 10 years old, and I'm like, good God.
Right.
My biological father doesn't want me. The stepdad doesn't want me. Bro, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
What is wrong with me that no man wants me?
Yeah,
And
sure.
It crushed me.
Right.
And so on the heels of that, very soon after that, I think my mom just felt that the best thing she could do for me, being the oldest, was to let me start over. And so she and my biological aunt, her sister, entered into conversations about me moving in with my aunt.
Right.
And just they would adopt me and I would just start over. And so that's what happened.
Okay.
So I'm 10 years old. I leave Oklahoma. I come to Texas. But my 2 younger brothers stay back with my mom.
Right.
So I move in with my aunt and uncle. They legally adopt me.
Okay.
So I'm 10 now, and I've had 3 last names.
Yeah.
And, man, I'm old enough now, bro. I can look back and see that my mom, bro, she was trying to help me. She was trying to let me hit that reset button. But when you're 10 years old, you don't have enough life experience.
Yeah, well, now you're thinking, oh, shit, my mom doesn't want me too.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Spot on.
Yeah.
And I can look back now and say, wow, like, man, that was such a sacrificial thing, because she felt badly about, how my life was going. She wanted me to start over, and she knew my aunt and uncle offered some stability and some structure. But yeah, when you're 10 years old, man, you don't have enough life experience to contextualize a decision like that. So you're exactly right, man. I'm thinking, okay, so my mom doesn't want me, my stepdad doesn't want me, my biological father. And how else do you interpret that? Like, in those 3 scenarios, who's the common denominator?
Yeah,
right?
it's you.
It's
yeah,
me.
right.
And so I'm 10 years old, and I mean, horrific insecurity and identity issues. And, I mitigated that and tempered those feelings through being the class clown, loud, boisterous, goofy.
Right.
But there was so much subconscious hurt and shame that I was carrying that I was primed. I was primed for addiction. I was primed for any form of escape that I could subconsciously bury and sedate those feelings. And that's where pornography came in.
Okay.
Yeah, I got exposed. I always use the air quotes.
Yeah.
A friend. I had a friend who lived on my block, and his dad had this shed out in his,
I like it already. Yeah.
I called it the smut hut, right? Because dude,
the Jack Shack,
bro, it was like we're in there one day, and he takes me in the shed in his backyard, and I'm talking stacks and stacks of magazines.
Oh yeah.
And of course, you gotta bear in mind.
It's periodicals.
Bro, it really was.
He had them organized.
I mean, it was
the Dewey Decimal System.
Dude, it was crazy.
Right.
The number he had, and I remember when his son showed me, because his son was even a couple years younger than me.
Sure.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, if his dad knows we're in here looking at these, he's going to kill us. And I remember how nonchalant the boy was. He's like, nah, he don't care.
Yeah.
And so, you raised the point earlier, like, oh, someone's dad had a stash. It was this kid's dad. And so they didn't lock the shed. I'm a product of the 80s. I'm the stereotypical, what we call the latchkey kids.
Yeah.
My parents both work in the summer. So, man, I had free reign, free access to the shed with the magazines. And so all summer, man, I'm just sitting there just feasting on pornography. And then about the same time, I have a friend whose dad has, some of your listeners are old enough to remember VHS cassette tapes.
Of course, yeah.
Right? And that's the first time. And I remember at this point, I'm 12. And this was when I was exposed to hardcore pornography. And I had never seen pornography in movie form. And, man, I can, like, you guys will understand it as people who've experienced highs and rushes. But, like, man, the first time I saw porn, like, I'm not embellishing when I say it was, like, moving pornography, and those images and those sounds was euphoric.
Yeah.
It was euphoric. It was like, oh my gosh, man. And I'm looking at these people, I'm like, they're happy. And in particular, here I am with identity issues, abandonment, rejection. And I'm seeing these men and these women want them. They want them so bad. They're like worshiping these men.
Right.
And I'm like, I want someone to want me that way.
Yeah.
To be vulnerable with me that way, to give themselves to me. So obviously, I mean, when you talk about pornography, obviously it's sexual, right? I mean,
Right.
You can't separate the sexual component, but at a deeper soul level, for me, it was more about the acceptance and and being wanted. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen that the old Russell Crowe movie, A Beautiful Mind. Where, where he portrays John Nash, who has the schizophrenic delusions, and he has these characters in the movie that he sees them. He thinks they're real, but they're just fictitious imaginations, in
figments of his imagination.
There you go. And that's very much how the pornography came to me. These performers on the screen it was like I knew them, and it was almost like I was in some kind of a relational connection because of the pornography. And I know people may hear that and think, dude, that's kind of weird. I'm like, well, I'm not saying it's not.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that's the nature of the beast.
Now, I've never really heard it broken down like that because, if you think about it, I mean, look, we're all guys here, so, we get it. I mean, when you're a kid, you treat your body like an amusement park, and that's kind of normal. I mean, I guess it becomes an emotional thing. It's definitely, I've never really looked at it in that way.
Well, and that's what's crazy about it was like when I would, as I got older and I would have the opportunity to, look for different, types of performers, like it wasn't enough to just have some type of pornography.
Right.
I would be like, who's in it? Who's starring in that?
Right.
Like I knew their names. And I'm telling you, man, as crazy as it sounds, it was like I had some form of a connection with them, and it wasn't a conscious thing. It wasn't like my middle school mind had the capacity to think, oh, I'm sedating my pain right now by escaping. And all I knew is like, man, I felt this grip on it that it so far exceeded, the normal teenage, red-blooded male, curiosity and hormones. Man, it's something at a soul level that this for me probably, man, whether it's an upper or a downer, some people snort it, inject it, smoke it, drink it. Like for me, it was that porn, and man, I loved the way it made me feel when I was looking at it, man. It was a trip and an escape, and very, very early on, I got addicted to it.
Right. Well, and I mean, I think, I don't know. I mean, me personally, I don't know where, because it's a slippery slope, if you will. Like, I mean, where do you draw that line? What's healthy? And then at what point does it become an addiction? And I mean, I guess you're kind of spelling it out like, when you're mentally having these people are now a part of your life, it's almost like it's like delusional,
Delusional is a good word for it.
Yeah.
It's crazy because the mind, and if you want to get into the psychology of it, the science of it, is oftentimes, the mind, your brain in particular, doesn't always have the capacity to distinguish between what's real and what's not, and so it's like it's internalizing and signaling and messaging to your soul that these are connections that you're forming. These are bonds that are being created in your life, and when you're young, especially, you're very vulnerable to that. And for me, man, it latched on and just intensified. But where the story gets really unique, and probably my journey in particular has a very, takes a hard right turn, is the summer before 9th grade. I had a radical conversion experience. I came to faith in Christ, and the story of that is because I never had a dad. I'd been raised by the first 10 years of my life by my grandfather.
Sure.
He was basically my dad. And bro, that guy had the most devoted faith I've ever seen in my life. Some people, man, some Christians are jerks. Some Christians are obnoxious. They're mean-spirited. They're unkind. Like, those are the ones that get all the press, right? This guy, because I lived with him, he was the real deal, man.
Yeah.
And having a front row seat to his life, it was like I hadn't become a Christian yet, but I had seen his life and I believed in it. I was like, nah, I like what I'm doing over here. I'm not trying to live that life.
Yeah.
But when he died, man, it was like losing a grandfather and a father figure all at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
And this sounds trippy to people, but it was actually at his funeral. I'm 14 years old, at his funeral. And I knew, like, that guy's in heaven. If I'm going to go to heaven, man, I gotta get serious about this Jesus thing, right? And so right there at a funeral in the front of this little country church in southern Oklahoma, I'm like, all right, Jesus, I'm yours, man.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to do. And so for 2.5 years, man, I didn't look at any pornography after that.
Oh, wow.
And then a year to the day of that happening, I preached my first sermon in church. I'm 15 years old. And bro, I go home that night and it was like, not a literal audible voice, but it was like, I just knew deep within inside me, like, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life.
Yeah.
This is what I was made for.
Okay.
And so it was such clarity and it was such serenity. But for 2.5 years, man, that life I had been getting mixed up in pornography wasn't a part of it.
Right.
But what I tell people, and I talk about this in the book, man, is like, you know, all of us have brokenness inside of us.
Sure.
And that brokenness gives us a system of beliefs. And the way you process those beliefs, for good or for bad, will determine the way you behave. So there's behavior, there's brokenness, there's belief, and then there's behavior.
Right.
And even though I was a Christian, I'm involved in church. Man, we'd started up this campus Bible study at my high school. I'm speaking to my peers, like, dude, from an outside perspective looking in, you're like, man, this guy's got his shit together. He's got it together, man.
Yeah.
But what I had found is because, you know, and I tell people this, man, you can have a saved soul, but a broken mind.
Yeah.
And I still had all those broken beliefs about my identity, my self-worth. And so around my junior year of high school was when I relapsed. And I went back to pornography. And man, like if you've ever, you know, been at the pool in the summer and you see one of those little kids do a cannonball, like that's how I jumped back in. Yeah. I wasn't splashing in the shallow end.
Sure.
I went right back in, and literally my 18th birthday, like to the day, I went to an adult bookstore for the first time.
Oh, nice.
But you can imagine how horribly conflicted I'm feeling.
Right.
Because I'm like, I know I'm going into ministry. I know, man, this spring I'm going to graduate.
Right.
I'm gonna go up to the Metroplex. I'm going to go to a Bible college. I'm going to study to be a pastor. And, man, these two worlds are incongruent.
Right.
Know? How do I jive these two worlds together?
Yeah, and then it's hard to draw that line of, you know, of what's healthy and then what's, you know, because I heard a comedian say this once: if God didn't want us to masturbate, he wouldn't have given us elbows. So
would have given us T-Rex arms, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, and I know there's a lot of there's a lot of debate over that,
right?
But here's what I can tell you. You know, I mean, we can always discuss the morality and of course the theology, but I mean, as a pastor, right? You know, the line is drawn very strictly that like that's. You know, pornography should not be any part of your life.
Sure.
That's not something that, you know, and personally, I believe in and of itself. I mean, pornography, I believe it's outside of what God desires for us. It's not healthy.
Well, and I mean, but I've actually heard like that, you know, I mean, as young boys or fetuses, that boys are like naturally have their hand on their
absolutely.
junk.
Yeah,
you know?
we're wired. I mean, we know, you know, we know that like that desire is hardwired. It's not that the desire in and of itself is bad. It's the pathway. I mean, just like with any addiction, what are you desiring? You're desiring peace. You're desiring wholeness. You're desiring some level of serenity and tranquility. Those are good desires.
Yeah.
It's how you channel those desires.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes us vulnerable and susceptible to any form of addiction.
Right. Yeah. Well, I guess let's pause there. We're going to hit commercials, our sponsors. We actually have Lil Sheila. Shout out. Chad's mom wrote a book called Two Calls. And if she goes to
twocalls.org.
Yeah.
You can get the book or on Amazon or.
But here's the.
Imagine getting that phone call as a parent that your son has been hit by a car and is being life flighted.
2 hours before we got the call, Chad had called me to tell me it was the best day of his life. And then I get another call, and a stranger had found him, and they were care flighting him to a trauma unit, and that he would start praying for our family that we needed to hurry.
You know, when you wake up on the operating table and they're like, we're going to cut off both your legs. And then I wake up and then one's gone, the other one's in an external rod system, it's just not good. The real kicker is that I've had like all of these scars all over my arms, and that's all from complications resulting from drug abuse.
I never thought about giving up on him. Never. This is my son, and I know he's going to be okay. You cannot just have help for the addict. You have to seek out professional help. The whole family has been affected.
And I just want to make that very clear to anybody who's out there listening, that if I can do this thing as much as I've been through, man, there's a lot of wiggle room for people before they get to that point where they can do it too.
All right. And that book is called Two Calls. If you go to twocalls.org, you can actually buy the book. Also, y'all do speaking and stuff and speaking engagements, right?
Yeah, we do both of those. So we go around and talk about stuff. We go talk to different groups about,
right.
Like the more family element of addiction. It's been really rewarding to hear some of the stories from people, like you were mentioning, people reaching out about the book and stuff like that.
It's awesome.
And it's all about kind of showing families like free resources that they can have if they have an addict that they're dealing with.
And it's all about your mom talking shit about what a horrible son you were.
Yeah, that's what it is.
That's really what it is. She just wanted to vent.
We just get on stage and then she starts beating me.
Verbally abusing. Look at this fucking loser.
all the pinned up emotion, right?
There you go. And then also we have stuff streaming music right now. We've got a new one called Take You on a Ride. All right, and that one is called Take You on a Ride, and that one is actually out now. It should be by the time this airs. And it's streaming on all major platforms. We've got a Spotify playlist called This Is Kelly Reverb. Be sure and follow that, and then follow the podcast while you're at it. But anyway, so back to your backstory, because I guess you were saying that Dallas, when you moved to the Metroplex, is where it really the wheels fell off, so to speak.
Yeah. So I told you guys in high school, I get called to ministry. I'm speaking on my campus every week in this Bible study. My youth pastor at the church where I attended in Wichita Falls, really, really good guy named Richard Norris, who continues to be a mentor in my life. He was allowing me to minister and speak in the youth group, and it was just like this trajectory I was on. And everyone from the outside looking in is like, man, this dude, he's got his stuff together. And I even had pastors from other churches, even other states, that had heard about me, like, hey, would you want to come and speak? And it was just like everything was lining up for this really promising future. And so even though I'm privately struggling with pornography addiction, I gave myself this sense of what I would just call a false hope. I'm like, well, when I move to Dallas, I'm going to be going to a Christian university. I'm going to be studying the Bible and theology, and I'm going to be in this very, for lack of a better term, this very spiritual bubble. It's going to kind of insulate me.
Sure.
And these demons they'll just dissipate and go away.
Right.
In the first couple months after I moved to Dallas, it's fresh, it's new, and it went the way I thought it would. Like I wasn't really struggling, but then when the new wore off, and then it's just you and your soul. And again, it's that brokenness, it's those beliefs, and then invariably it shapes and informs your behavior.
Right.
And so, man, I would have these episodes where, because the school I was at was so strict. I mean, they had told us up front, like, man, if we find out you're using pornography, you're done. You're done.
Okay.
Very strict.
Right.
And so, bro, I would literally at times drive away like other cities, like drive an hour or more just to get away to not
Sure.
risk being caught.
Right.
And I would sneak off to like adult bookstores, and you go
that
in
and that itself kind of creates a an excitement too.
Oh,
Like
something illicit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, without question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it heightens the rush of it because
Yeah.
you know it's something you're not supposed to be doing.
Right.
So on top of the sexual component, there's sort of this adrenaline that comes with being sneaky.
Sure.
And yeah, admittedly that was true, but what was crazy about that season was that my life personally, as far as anyone else could have seen, was going very well. I got involved at a really good church in Saxey, Northeast
Sure.
Dallas area. And I was interning, and I got hired on staff and part-time while I'm finishing up school. But like my college years, like what should have been a season of like preparation and focusing on God and preparing for the ministry. Not that there weren't good moments, not that there weren't some victories, some wins in that season, but like it just felt so dominated by this addiction of me sneaking off. And
Right.
And man, there were just these moments where like I just felt like I cannot overcome this. I can't win. I'm not going to try anymore. And I think it was in that age, in that season of my life, that I kind of made peace with the fact of like, this is just going to be my normal. Like living a double life is going to be normal for me. Not
Right.
because I want it to
Right.
be, but just because if I come forward and I come clean, they're going to kick me out. I'm going to lose my merit, my credibility.
Look, I'm going to say this. I think, even, in the profession of being a pastor, I mean, we've seen it, a
lot lately, especially.
Well, Jimmy Swaggart back in the day, you know,
right.
the whole tearing up.
I
and,
have sinned.
Yeah, with the prostitutes and stuff like that. So it's not like, and then also one thing that, I mean, this could be off topic, but, I think it's kind of almost unhealthy, like how the Catholic Church is, where you have to be celibate to be a priest.
Right.
I mean, that's, obviously that's not working out,
Right.
I mean, with the whole molestation and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I think it's a situation with that one in particular. I mean,
Right.
I personally, with respect to, my Catholic brothers and sisters,
Right.
I personally think that's a requirement placed on men that shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I don't see it
Well,
in
I think it's
Scripture, and
an
I don't-
antiquated policy they had back in the day,
Yeah.
so.
But the conflict, I mean, you can imagine when you're involved in serving in ministry, and I think where it really got, where I really began to scare myself at how easily I would vacillate between these two worlds. And one of the things I say in the book, particularly after I'd had these seasons where, and you guys know, when you'll be clean for a while, and then you get that knock on the door of your heart of like when those,
Right.
you're jonesing, or you're getting the itch, to look at something or use or whatever. But one of the things I say in the book is that when the devil knocks at the door, like he's not coming to visit. He's coming to stay.
Yeah.
Like he wants to stay.
Yeah.
He's not, hey, I'm just dropping by, wanted to say,
Right.
hey.
Right.
Like he wants to take up residency.
Sure.
And so, man, in college, I started acting out sexually. I started having sexual relationships, and then strip clubs. Being in Dallas, there's no shortage of that sort of thing.
Of course.
And so it really began to scare me at how easily, like in one setting, in one moment, I could be in a church world and just feel so at peace, like, okay, that's not who I am.
It would be kind of ironic if I went to a strip club. Hey, there's my pastor, man.
Dude, there you go, man. There you go.
Yeah.
And yet and so imagine the fear.
Yeah.
Imagine the nervousness of like, I know I'm not supposed to be here. I know this is wrong. Like I was horribly conflicted.
Sure.
And yet like the belief in my mind was,
are you just rolling there solo?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm not telling
Yeah.
anybody.
Yeah.
I'm not telling anybody.
So
100% solo.
Dirty little secret that you're
Dirty little
keeping
secret.
easy.
Yeah, 100%. And so, but what happens, man, and one of the things that you guys have probably heard this saying is, we're only as sick as our secrets. And I don't know if you've heard that, but like the idea is the power of secrecy is so strong. Right. And so because I was living in secrecy, I was plunging deeper and deeper into my addiction, and so what I did was I just moved the same kind of the same line of thinking that I told myself, well, when I go to a Christian college, it's just going to go away. I just kind of copied and pasted that to, well, when I graduate college,
Yeah.
and I start working at a church,
Right.
then it'll go away.
Right.
It'll just stop.
Sure.
You know,
When I get married. Yeah.
and that would come
Right,
right. Yeah.
yeah.
And so it's like, and so what it is, it's that denial, that classic addict denial of like,
Sure.
oh, I can quit, just not right now.
Right.
I just don't feel like it.
Yeah. There's a more opportune time. And then I'll have the motivation, I'll have the strength, whatever you want to call it.
The situation will be right.
There you go.
Yes.
And so, man, I graduate college, I get hired at this church, and not only do I continue in my addiction, like it goes lower and lower. And I'll tell you guys a story, man. And this is a story that some people like. They say that's crazy. Like, did that really happen? But right out of college, I got engaged to this girl that I'd met, and the short version is she broke off the engagement.
Okay.
And went back to an old boyfriend. And I already told
Was
you
there
guys,
any particular reason?
man, the simple answer is she just had never got over him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't
All right.
anything.
All
I mean,
right.
she even told me.
But then I'm sure you probably took that on as,
Oh my gosh.
I'm still that same piece of shit that
There
everybody's
you
been
go.
leaving.
There
Yeah.
you go, man.
Yeah.
It triggered all those memories,
Yeah.
and I didn't just get angry at her. Man, if I'm being honest, I got very angry at God.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Why did you bring this woman into my life? I had already announced to my family, to my church, we're going to get married on this day. So now I look dumb.
Oh, yeah.
And all these issues of rejection. And so
Right.
this is a story, people won't believe this. Her birthday comes, after we'd broken up. Her birthday comes. It's on a Monday. And that was my only day off from the church. I'm working at a church now full time.
Sure.
And I'm at my apartment and I'm moping around. I'm sad. I'm depressed. I'm lonely, all these things. And so that night I go out. I'm like, I got to get out of this apartment. And I go out to eat at a Brahms.
Okay.
Right there.
Shout out Brahms.
Yeah, shout out to Brahms, man.
Crinkle cut fries.
There you
Yeah.
go, baby. And so I'm sitting at this Brahms, and I feel my phone ringing, and I pull it out of my pocket, and I look, and it's an unknown number. So I just answer, and it's a female caller. And she's like, "Hey, is Steve there?" And a normal, responsible, sensible adult would be like, "I'm sorry, you have the wrong number."
Right.
But I was like, I'm just going to mess with whoever this person is. You know?
Okay.
And I said, actually, Steve's in the bathroom. He can't talk right now. And she goes, okay, well, will you have him call me back? And I said, hey, I'm just messing with you. There's no Steve.
Right.
And then her tone immediately changes, and she was very agitated. You could tell. So she says, hey, cut the crap.
Yeah.
Did you or did you not call for an escort?
Oh.
And I
Bingo.
I kind of paused. I was like, and I was just silent.
Right.
And she says, oh, that got your attention, didn't it?
Right.
And I'm like, who is this? She says, no, who is this? I'm like, well, you called me.
Right.
And I said, there's no Steve here. And she says, okay, well, I'm talking to you now. Are you interested?
Yeah.
So just time out, right? Think about this. On the day of my ex-fiance's birthday,
Yeah.
I'm lonely, I'm depressed, I'm vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I just happened to get a wrong call
Right.
from an escort.
And you're at a Brahms, dude. What better place?
Dude, it's like all these factors.
Right.
Okay.
And you get a cold call from a prostitute, dude.
I get a call. And so I'm sitting there, and she says, are you interested?
Right.
And I just said, I don't think so. I've never done anything like this. It's not really. And she's like, well, there's a first time for everything. Why don't you try it? She's doing all this. And then I said, I should have just hung up the phone.
Sure.
Like I felt, the part of me that was still thinking straight,
Sure.
Holding on to my faith was like, hang up the phone now.
Right.
Just hang up the phone.
Right.
But I didn't. And I said the worst possible thing I could have said, which was, I said, well, for starters, I said, I don't even know what you look like.
Right.
And so she begins to, in very vivid detail, describe her physical features. And literally as she's talking,
Yeah.
some people are old enough to remember. You remember the Rolodex
Yeah.
thing that you could keep people's contact information.
Sure. Yeah.
And it was just like a roll of files. Like literally as she's talking and she's describing, it was like the mental Rolodex in my mind. And I'm thinking of all these porn stars that I've grown
Right.
up watching. I'm like, so she looks like, okay.
Yeah.
Or, she's describing her. So it's like in my mind,
Yeah.
the thought that came into my mind, it was really two thoughts.
Well, so now I guess this was an older phone. Like, was it like not where she could just
this is pre.
pics?
I mean,
this is flip phone.
There you go, man.
Right?
This is Motorola Razr days,
Nice.
man.
I like it.
And you know, the old Nokias.
Yeah.
But there was no sending pictures, so she's just describing it.
Yeah.
But there were two thoughts I had, and one of them was like, man, I can finally, you know, I'd had all these thoughts and exposures, you know, to these pornographic scenes.
Right.
It's like, man, I can finally have an encounter like that.
Yeah.
You know, the way these women have made these men feel wanted, I can have that.
Sure.
But really the thought that really pushed me over the edge was it was kind of like this ex who had broken off this relationship. It was almost like I'll show her.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was kind of a perfect storm,
It
if
was
you
a
will.
perfect storm.
Yeah.
It absolutely was. And what's crazy is, like, again, I grew up in church.
Mm-hmm.
I have a degree in the Bible. Like, I have enough to recognize, man, the devil's fingerprints are all over this.
Right.
And yet it's like in that moment, I was so, and it's not an excuse,
Mm-hmm.
but it's an explanation of where I was at.
Sure.
I was like, you know, to be wanted. And on her birthday, it was almost like it's like the ultimate screw you.
Yeah.
You know what? Screw you.
Yeah.
You know what?
I'll show her.
On your birthday, I'll show her. There
Yeah.
you go. And so literally, we're talking, and she goes, I'll tell you what. She goes, why don't you swing by an ATM,
Right.
get out $300,
Okay.
meet me here. We'll talk. We'll meet up. If you want to go forward, cool. If not, no harm done.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, no harm. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And literally, as I'm getting the cash out of the ATM, I'm literally telling myself, I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah.
As I'm
just
taking-
in case.
As I'm taking
Yeah.
the money out, there wasn't even, in my mind, there wasn't even a just in case.
Oh, right.
It was literally like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not
Right.
going to do it. As I'm getting, I mean, it's that denial.
Yeah.
It's that denial.
Uh-huh.
And as I'm driving to meet her, you know, we all remember the old cartoons where, you know, you've got the character who's got an angel on one
yeah.
side and a devil on the other side. And they're,
Right,
and they're
yeah.
both, that's where I was.
Yeah.
There was a part of me that's like, what are you doing?
Right.
You know, and then there's another part like, you're not going to do anything. Just
Right.
go meet her.
Sure.
And so anyway, man, I meet up with her and we go back to my apartment,
Uh-huh.
and the whole episode was maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so quick.
Right.
And I wish I mean, it's like you think the story ends there, but where it gets crazier. And what I tell people in the book is like in the depths of my rebellion, and I would say this to anyone struggling with any addiction,
Mm-hmm.
like, here I am, man, struggling so bad, screwing up so bad. Like, you would think a lot of people's picture of God is that God would be like, I'm done with you.
Right.
And like, he would just wash his hands and pull away and like,
yeah.
go,
You're a lost cause.
yeah, you're a lost cause. Let me go
Right.
move on to someone else. It was in situations like these, and there's more of them I talk about in the book, where God would show up in the midst of my like darkest rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
He would show up in these ways, and the way I worded in the book is like, whether it was sneaking off to another city or having these secret encounters, it was like I was fooling people and hiding from people, but like I was never going to beat God in a game of hide and seek.
Right.
He was always going to find me.
Sure.
And he would show up, and on this night, man, me and this young lady, we have our encounter,
Right.
and I'm sitting in the living room. She goes into my bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
She's doing her makeup or whatever, and I hear her call out. She goes, "Hey, can you come in here real fast?"
Mm-hmm.
And I come in there, and she points to the mirror in our bathroom. She goes, "What are these?"
Right.
So I have a roommate who was not there,
Uh-huh.
very strong in his faith, and he had put all these sticky notes on the mirror, and they're Bible verses.
Uh-huh.
He was trying to memorize the Bible.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And she goes, "What are these?" And I was like, "Oh, my roommate, he puts those up there." And she's like,
Right.
"Wow, he's really into the church thing, huh?"
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, "Yeah, he's that's kind of his scene."
Mm-hmm.
So then she asked me, "How about you?
Right.
Are you into the church thing?
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe in God?" So imagine like how totally crappy I feel right now.
Right.
Right? Because, and you know this, anytime after you use or you feed your addiction,
Yeah.
that flood of shame that comes in the immediate moment afterward where you feel so bad.
Yeah. Like, why did I do that?
Why did I do
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
So I feel so crappy.
Uh-huh.
And now she's asking me, "Hey, do you believe in God?"
Right.
And I'm like, what am I going to tell her? Oh,
Yeah.
actually, I'm a pastor.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. And so, no, I said, you know, so I'm totally backpedaling,
Uh-huh.
you know, and I'm like, well, yeah, you know, I'm not super religious. But so anyway,
Yeah.
I feel so uncomfortable. I put the focus back on her.
Yeah.
And I said, how about you? Do you believe in God?
Uh-huh.
And her answer shocked me. She says, oh, absolutely. Absolutely, I do. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. I believe the Bible is real. I believe all that. And I said, with respect, how do you believe all those things and get into this line of work?
Right. The oldest profession in the world.
And she says, well, and man, this rocked me to my core. She said, well, when I was in high school, I used to go to this church, and it was in this youth group. She goes, and I had a youth pastor. Keep in mind, I'm a youth pastor at this time.
Sure.
And she said, he used to tell us this story, this analogy of how we have two natures. We have a nature that's sinful and wants to do wrong, and we have a nature, if we're a Christian, we have a new nature in Christ that wants to do right. And she said, whichever nature you feed is going to be the one that dominates.
Sure.
And he told us the story of, it was like if we had these two dogs, and there was this one dog, and we fed the dog every day, and we fed it, fed it, and we just every day gave it all it wanted to eat. But then this other dog, we starve it, and we don't give it any food, hardly any water, and it's just barely alive. And then the day comes where those two dogs are let loose to fight one another.
Yeah.
Which dog's going to win?
Yeah.
The one that you feed.
Right.
And bro, she said that, and there was this profound sadness in her eyes. It was almost like she was traveling in her mind to another place. And it was like you could see her like eyes getting moist, and she just shook her head and she said, I guess I fed the wrong dog.
Yeah.
So in that moment, I'm looking at this prostitute.
Right.
But what I'm seeing is this teenage girl
Yeah.
who's hurting.
Yeah.
And she got off on this bad path, and now she's trapped in it.
Right.
And I'm looking at her, and I'm thinking of all these fantasies I've seen in porn. Oh man, they just love sex, and they can't get enough.
Daddy
they want to do
issues,
this.
yeah, right.
Yeah. And I'm looking. This is a young lady who's broken.
Yeah.
And dude, I have just contributed to.
Yeah.
And invested in her brokenness, and I'm perpetuating that cycle.
You're feeding the wrong dog.
Oh man, and so it's like I'm looking. I can't even put into words the amount of shame that I felt in that moment.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And that's what I'm saying. Like God kept showing up in moments like that.
Right.
And man, the short version, again, there's the stories. That's why I wrote a book.
Right. Yeah.
But I ended up I confessed to a man in the church about 6 months after that. I said, hey man, when I've been on staff here, you need to know I've been having all these encounters. I've been going all these places.
Yeah. And so what was the frequency like of that? Like,
well, after that woman.
After that one.
Oh, dude, after she.
Yeah.
So when she and I were dating, man, it's funny. Our relationship was actually very pure. We had kissed, and that was it.
Yeah.
But when she broke it off with me, I went crazy, and man, it was a lot. I mean, it was like.
Was it like 6 months, 3 months?
Yeah, by that time when I confessed to the man, 6 months had gone by, and there had been. I mean, I have to really sit and think.
Yeah, do the math.
It was numerous.
There was
Encounters.
copious $300 withdrawals.
Yeah. Well, and there was that, and then it even went into like the massage parlors, and and I mean just that whole world, and it's like anything else, man. Like addiction doesn't have, like addiction's never going to tap the brakes.
Right.
Addiction always wants to go faster.
Sure.
It wants to go further. And so it's not like your soul says, hey, I'm content.
Right.
That's not the nature of addiction.
No, and every time you get to a line in the sand, you're like, oh, I'm never going to cross that.
Yep.
And then
Right.
you cross over, and you're like,
Yeah.
Well, here's a new line.
And then you draw a
even
new
saw
line.
it. Yeah, you draw a new one.
And then you promise yourself, I won't cross that one. And then you look up and there's like 20 lines. You can't cross, right? Yeah. And that's what happened. And so I end up losing my ministry. I come forward, I confess. And bro, I knew when I came forward, like, I have disqualified myself from ministry. Like if I was that pastor, I would have fired me.
Right.
I'm like, dude, you hired me, you trusted me. There's a moral, ethical standard, spiritual standard that pastor should be held to.
Yeah.
And I've violated that. And so then you fast forward, bro, 3 weeks to the day that I left the church, I meet the woman that I'm now married to. And man, I won't even get into all that, but I will tell you, I thought marriage would fix my porn addiction.
Yeah.
Because now I'm married, I can have sex, I can do, and it didn't.
Yeah.
And my wife, in numerous instances, all of which I talk about in the book, she would find my computer history, or if I'd gone out and bought something, she would find receipts in my pocket where I didn't have the presence of mind to throw it away because I was so hopped up in in lust at the moment. Like God kept exposing me. He kept letting me get caught.
Right.
So where the genesis of me moving in a different direction came when she and I had been married less than 2 years, pretty early on. And she came to me. She goes, look, I know there are women who maybe are okay with this stuff. They don't care. They're into that. She goes, I'm not one of them.
Right.
She goes, this hurts me so badly. It makes me feel like I'm not enough. I can't compete with that. I can't measure up to that. She says, I want to be with you, but like this hurts me so badly. Like I can't keep going forward. Something's got to change. And I think for the first time in my life, like I realized, man, I've already lost a lot. I've already hurt myself a lot. I've already had to walk away from this church and these students that I was pastoring, and the tears in their eyes, my final service, and they're like, why are you leaving? And I can't really tell them. And it's just, I'm like, am I about to lose this woman that God has given me now? Like, am I about to, you know? And so it wasn't this overnight thing, but it was the beginning of like, I think I really came to grips with like, oh my God, dude, this can literally destroy my life. Yeah. Like it's already cost me.
It's already altering
like
your life. Yeah.
But this, like, I love this woman. Is this something that started in 6th grade?
Right. Is it
How did
worth
I get
it?
here,
Yeah,
man?
yeah.
How did I get here?
Yeah.
To where, man, you know, sneaking off to the shack in the backyard and, you know, and looking at magazines and jacking off and all the, you know, blah, blah, blah. All the things boys, you know, laugh about.
Yeah.
And here I am, Mary. I've lost my ministry.
Yeah.
Am I really about to lose this one? It scared me.
Yeah.
And then we find out we're pregnant. And then I find out I'm having a daughter.
Yeah.
And on my 30th birthday, I hear her heartbeat on the sonogram.
Yeah.
And hearing that, it was like it scared me. Because remember, full circle, I never had a dad.
Right.
I know the power that men have to bless or to burden their kids. And I said, man, I can't let this cycle continue. I can't. And it scared me, bro. It scared me. And so for me, everyone has their own pathway. I would say for me, what played a significant role in my recovery journey was I had to go through a lot of counseling. I had a lot of unlearning to do because, again, brokenness, that shapes your beliefs, beliefs that inform your behavior. Right. And for me, I had never dealt with all that brokenness. And because I hadn't, I was believing all these lies about myself. And man, when you see like when you look in the mirror and you don't love yourself, and that's what I said, you know, that clip that Clark saw. Like like you won't fight for your freedom if you think you're unworthy of it. Yeah. And you're like, man, I'm just a piece of crap. Nobody loves me. Nobody wants me. Right. I don't, you know what? Like if you really believe that, you're not going to fight. And you're not going to reach out for help. And you're not going to go to meetings. And you're not going to sit down with a counselor. And you're not going to put filters on your phone. And you're not going to be accountable to others. Like you're not even going to go there because you feel like it doesn't matter because I don't matter. Right. And I had believed that lie for so long. And that's something else I say, man, is that you can believe a lie so long that it starts to feel like the truth. Yeah. And that's crazy. That's scary. You can believe the truth. It becomes the truth for you. Yeah. Your own propaganda in your mind. It indoctrinates you and you believe it and you're like, this is now no longer something I struggle with. This is who I am. This is my identity. Right. And I think anyone listening to this or watching this who struggles with recovery, you've got to know, you know, and I didn't come on here to be preachy, but I'm just saying, what I've discovered, man, is like you've got to know that like God did not create you to live as a slave to an addiction. That's why the book is called No Longer a Slave. Right. Is God didn't make us for that. He created us to live in freedom. He created us to live in wholeness, to not be controlled, to not be powerless, to live the life he created us to live. And for me, it was like I had a lot of healing in my mind. And what I've learned is this, and I think you guys can relate to this. When your thinking is right and your mind is clear and you have right thinking, right belief, your behavior just follows suit. Sure. But man, if you've got jacked up thinking and just warped toxic thoughts filling your mind, you're going to live an existence that's dismal at best. And so when my mind got right with counseling, with community, with my wife, who is a gift to me, this coming March, we'll celebrate 20 years. Congratulations. Thank you, man. Yeah. She hung in there with me. She's been my biggest supporter. And I've been able to learn, like, bro, I can almost get emotional talking about this. Yeah. I've been able to learn unconditional love being a dad myself. Yeah. And looking at my daughter, and we have a son who's adopted. And his mom was an addict, and we rescued him out of foster care, and he was in detox for 2 months at Parkland. Yeah. And I look at him and how much I love him and how much I love my daughter, and like to think to myself, this is how God sees me. Yeah. And like I wouldn't want anything to hurt or control either one of my kids. Like I want
Well,
them to,
now, and you also get to break that cycle.
there you
too.
go, man.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like I look at it. I look at them, and I think I know how much I love them. And my biggest struggle in life has been coming to the place where I believe, like, that's how God looks at us.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah,
like,
man.
as far as dealing with the actual addiction, there is SA and all kinds of different groups.
Right.
Did you just gradually stop or have that epiphany one day? Here it is. I'm not going to do it anymore. And then you stopped? Or was it like, do you have to kind of keep cognizant of the fact that you are, who you are, that
That you're
addict?
prone to
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah. For me, it was definitely a gradual thing. I tell people it wasn't this. I love stories. I love stories when people are like, man, this day, this time.
Right.
For me, it was a lot of 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Right.
But I noticed the gap starting to get bigger and bigger. But like going through, I will tell you, faith-based recovery. And I'm not
Preaching.
I'm
I
not
got it.
well, and I'm not
Yeah.
speaking ill of those that are not faith-based.
Right.
But for me, as and my faith is my faith as a
Right.
Christian, being able to couple my Christian faith with an atmosphere that says, hey, it's okay not to be okay. You can love God, and yet you've got this brokenness of things that, you got jammed up at a young age. Hey, let's figure this out together.
Right.
Let's walk together. And having that safe place where you can live out your faith and also be authentic about the fact that you're still human.
Sure.
Man, those two things overlapping. Like here in the Metroplex, there's a program called Regeneration. They call it Regen for short. And it's a faith-based, basically it's a faith-based 12-step recovery.
Well, to
And
be
it's
honest,
powerful.
the big book is in the AA book
Right.
is faith-based.
There you go. Yeah.
So
Yeah, and so for me, it was that. It was a lot of layers to it. Counseling was huge because counseling helped me show compassion to myself. I had always looked back as that little kid, and I was still seeing myself, as the kid who was rejected by my earthly father, by my stepfather. And when I began to understand the acceptance of my heavenly father, and then now as a dad, getting to love my kids and getting
Right.
to, it's like, man, that with my wife, with community, with accountability, and then there's also the practical things like, man, I've got filters on my TV, filters on my computer, filters on my
Sure.
phone,
Right.
because at the end of the day, I don't. Am I a Christian? Am I a pastor? Yeah, but
but are you invincible? Yeah,
exactly.
You're a
Yeah.
human, so
Well, read
I
the
get
Bible.
it, dude.
Look at all the men in the Bible who,
Right.
they fell in a weak moment, and I'm
Right.
like, why would I, looking at my history, I was like, hey, what is the wise thing to do here?
Yeah.
The wise thing to do is to not bank on me to make a good decision in that
Right.
moment.
Sure.
Let me make a good decision now,
Right.
while I'm in my right mind,
Right.
to put that block in place.
Sure.
So if I am feeling tempted, the decision's already been made for me.
Right.
Does that make
Gotcha.
sense?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
totally makes sense.
Yeah, man.
So.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, and
Dude,
once
thank
again,
you for the opportunity.
Yeah, once again, here is the book, and it's available.
Hold it up further.
in stores.
So
or is it
it's
just
actually on
online?
Amazon right now. Yeah, you
Okay.
can get it on Amazon. One of the churches here locally carries that in their bookstore. But yeah,
Okay.
for most of your listeners, they can just get on
Well,
Amazon
and
or
then-
hadleybaker.com.
And
They
then
can purchase it
I
there
was
as well.
I was gonna say also that you were so easy to get a hold of on Instagram.
Yeah.
That's where I just reached out to you on
Yeah.
Instagram.
Yeah,
So
man.
if anybody, do you do public speaking as well?
Oh, absolutely. I
Okay.
mean, my primary, obligation is to my church where I
Uh-huh.
pastor
Sure.
in Rowlett. But I do, like just a few weeks ago, I did a men's event. My wife and I were on a radio broadcast not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
I've spoken in recovery settings. Man, I enjoy any platform. I mean, kind of like you were saying, that you go and you talk about stuff, right?
Right, yeah.
You talk about things that people can relate to. And so, yeah,
Sure.
I'm happy to step into any setting where if this this topic or this theme needs to be addressed, however I can partner with others to do that,
Right.
I'd love to do that.
Okay. Well, once again, thank you for coming on.
Thank y'all for
and
having me, man. I
Thank you for
appreciate it.
sharing your story.
For sure.
Chadwick, as always,
Yep.
a challenge, but we got through it.
Yeah, we did. These headphones hurt my ears. I took them off. So
Hey, for what
I
it's
think it's
worth, you have Beautiful ears, man.
Thank you so
It
much.
is.
Lovely ears.
I think it's the Jeffrey Dahmer glasses.
Yeah.
That are
yeah. The
messing
guy
with
did
your-
some bad stuff, but he had a good taste in eyewear. You know what I mean?
All right.
All right.
All right. Well, hey guys, be sure like, subscribe,
face
all
on the
that
microphone.
good stuff. Next week we actually have Jennifer Dunlap from Janie's Place, which is a woman's shelter or sober living actually out in Plano, in that area. But excited about that. But be sure like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and remember, kids, there is no magic pill for sobriety, because if there was, we would all take too many.
Activate.